Today, let's get to listen to stories of triumph amidst failures, courage despite fear, strength through weakness, and even the occasional hopeful cheer from personal punny experiences. I am your host, RKaye, and this is the BetterU podcast. What is up, fam? Welcome to another episode of the BetterU podcast. Coach RKaye here. Thank you so much for joining me in today's show. Now, beginning today and for the next few weeks, we shall be talking a lot more about possibly the most Googled questions out there in terms of fitness. Anything really related about fitness, especially when you are starting out your fitness journey and trying just pretty much to figure things out. And from the perspective of Google, we just love to ask so many different questions, some of them quite simple, others not too simple. So I have pretty much selected some of the most questions that, some of the questions that have been asked a lot by many people, possibly one of you, all right, watching today. So for today's show, we will be delving about the question of when do I train, and specifically, do I train in the morning? Do I train in the afternoon? Do I train in the evening? Do I train when everyone else is asleep? So that's pretty much one of the many crucial questions that you guys have been able to ask. And lucky you, I have had quite the experience of training on different time schedules, except maybe when everyone is asleep. But to tell you or expand on answering this specific question for you all, it really boils down to a number of different factors. And to be honest, there are certain studies that will tell you that it is better to train in the morning. And there will also be some fitness professionals who tell you that after your entire day, that is when you should be training. To me, based on experience, the best thing that really worked for me in terms of training sustainably and consistently was to really just simply look at how each of my day goes. All right, especially for you all who have very, very tight and busy schedules. Sometimes you don't necessarily have that window specifically similar on each day. Now, I am talking about similar on each day because if you aren't aware, a lot of training programs will and bestly suggest that you at least have a 24-hour window between each training session, all right? So let's say that your schedule in the week will roughly give you maybe a morning free on a Monday, an evening on a Tuesday, a morning on a Wednesday. So that kind of clashes with the idea of having a bit of a window to rest and recuperate between training sessions, right? So that in itself is already a factor for you to be able to know if you should be training on a morning or an evening or an afternoon for it to be something that is consistent in your own lifestyle. So let me just be little Miss Story time here and tell you guys all about my own experiences when it came to training in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, late at night. All right. So I have had the opportunity to actually train on those specific time slots. Now, when I talk about morning, it is like literally wee hours in the morning where it is still sundown, I guess. The sun hasn't risen yet, around between 5 to 6, maybe 7 at max. My experience with this is number one, a factor with this is if you guys are actually willing to wake up at that time of day. Now, I understand maybe some of you are parents, maybe some of you are professionals who already have very late nights. I wouldn't suggest or recommend training at this time slot in the morning if it will be a deterrent to your own sleeping quality and the length of time that you get to sleep. That's a number one thing that you should be looking into if you want to really train in the morning. Another factor that you should be looking into is after training, what is it that you feel after training? Do you feel like really exhausted that you want to go back to bed? If that is also the case for you, I wouldn't really suggest going to training early in the morning as well, especially if your training routine is a bit in a high intensity type of programming. All right. So that's also another factor. So as you can see, there are certain situations that will come about when you want to decide to train. Okay, we have a little visitor here. All right, so again, that is quite a factor to consider as well. There are many, many things within your day that could result with you not really having to have the opportunity to train in the morning. All right, we have a little flying guest over here. Go away, you fly. All right. But anyway, guys, so going back to my own experience, of course, again, I wouldn't necessarily say that the experiences I have had would also be exactly the same for you guys. So if you are leaning to want to train in the morning, those are certain criteria and factors that you maybe want to explore and experiment on. So making sure that you have enough sleep, making sure that you are well aware that you do need to wake up a little bit more early than usual. And also, what is the effect on your body after you train? So, those are specifically things that you need to look at. Training around lunch to afternoon is also something maybe that you would like to consider if your schedule possibly is flexible that way, that you have maybe a specific length of time during your lunch break. Maybe you see that as a good window for you to train. Again, a factor that you should consider is after you train, will you still be able to go about your work or your studies the rest of the day? All right. If let's say you actually have the freedom to work out your schedules within the day, you can maybe cancel things after you train. If that is something that you have the ability to do, then go ahead. You can also train in that specific time period of your schedule, right? So also a factor to look at is, will you be sacrificing that specific time? Your lunch break, maybe, as an example, will you be sacrificing that as an exercise time of your day instead of you replenishing your body and eating or getting to have lunch or getting time to socialize with your friends or your family? So those are also factors that you would have to look into if you want to train around lunch or in the afternoon. So those are things that you should definitely put in a list and ask yourself. All right. Now, again, comparing morning to afternoon, you should definitely have a lot better sleep, right? So sleep won't really be much of a factor unless your default, again, reaction after you train is you want to sleep. If you do have the leeway to have a little bit of a nap after your training session in the afternoon, go ahead. But again, if your body reacts that way, maybe you wouldn't want really to train in the afternoon as well. So you guys are probably getting a bit of an idea here where you should be placing your training schedule already. We already went through morning and afternoon. In terms of evening, maybe late afternoon or early evening, possibly. Or if we compare it to the morning, maybe this is between the rush hour where you just want to possibly just let traffic go away first and go to the gym and train while waiting for traffic to settle down, right? So this will be around maybe past office hours, like 5 p.m. to maybe as much as 8 p.m. in the evening. All right. So if you live quite far away and your training, your after training effect is for you to feel sleepy, maybe you want to stay safe and not train too much of a high intensity in this time period. Especially also, you want to consider that you've already had quite a busy day, or you probably had quite a number of things you've already done before training. So it kind of gives you also the factor here, or you need to factor in that you've already had a busy day. Will I be able to train at the intensity that I want? So in terms also of training in the evenings, you also get to look into the many different things that you've already done in the day, guys. So if you're considering training at this time slot as well, you may want to see that you are still able to give a bit more quality into your training. Will you be able to push yourself to the intensity that you would normally go through in training? If that's the case, then go ahead and be sure to regularly go into training in the evenings. But again, if you have had a very, very busy day and you often feel that you don't really have the energy anymore to train, maybe you shouldn't find training in the evening as something that you should consider. All right. So I know it's something that's quite repetitive throughout our conversation here today, guys, but I'm sure that you are getting a better picture of how really it is quite a predicament to consider which time of day should I go and train, right? Our final selection is super late at night, which quite frankly, I do not recommend it. I have had the experience of training like super late into the night, past 11 p.m. And quite frankly, if you do want to consider that, it is something that I would recommend for someone who maybe has a later start in their day. Maybe if you begin your day around noon, maybe it is something feasible that you could work on it, because you could possibly also be sleeping late into the mornings, right? If that's your thing, if that's a schedule that is exact for you, and you don't really feel the buzz of wanting to just pass out while you're training, then by all means, you guys can do your training during those times. But again, with my own experience, I myself have not really seen the intensity that I wanted to put in training when I had the opportunity to do my training at late that late at night at around that time. So, but for people who have a schedule that is perfect and that will work with a very, very late at night schedule, go ahead. And so, with all my comparisons with these time slots in the day, again, guys, it is really up to you how flexible you feel your training schedule can be. Again, a lot of studies have shown that training in the morning is possibly the best. I I have my own I have my own certain doubts about that. Again, for me, as I have worked with my own clients, it is still something that you should be able to have a lot of control over. Um, you know, doesn't mean that a specific study says that you should work out in the morning. You should. Um, there are, of course, other things that you should factor in. If it is something that is not really matching up with your lifestyle, matching up with your schedule, it doesn't really make sense for you to push yourself to, okay, I need to train at 5 o'clock in the morning. All right. If that is not feasible for you, if your body does not give you the permission to push yourself, because ultimately, guys, when you train, you want to be able to have that, essentially, you want to be able to also enjoy your training, right? You want to be able to really put your whole effort into your programming, right? So that to me is a better priority, especially with my clients as well. That is actually the one thing that is great about when you have remote training or online training. You really have the privilege and the convenience to take your program and do it anywhere, anytime that is convenient, or when you have a schedule that's available to you. All right. So again, if you are on the fence, if you want to train consistently, but you have that question of, oh, what time in the day should I be training? You can always give it a go, whichever training schedule you feel you are more comfortable with. You can try that out for maybe a week or two, see how it ends up in terms of how your body feels, how your mind still gets to work after you train, and then see which one really falls into place for you. Because, of course, in terms of training, you still want to be a fully functioning individual after, all right? Or before you train. All right. So again, guys, it is something that you should consider, but only consider or make it such a big priority if you really have like big chunks of time that's free in your day. I know a lot of you are really cramped up in your schedules and your time. And so to me, the best way to answer the question really is, what time is convenient for me and what time can I put or have the moment where I can train, right? So I'm guessing you know what I mean by that, guys. So to me, whatever it is that you guys decide, whether it's morning, whether it's afternoon, evening, late into the night, maybe you want it like super duper early in the morning, like what's the name? Mark Wahlberg, who has to wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning. Again, guys, it is something that you are really able to commit yourself to. Stick with that. All right. You don't have to necessarily be exactly the same with everyone else. If everyone else says morning and the only time that you can spare in the day is evening or after work or after school, then by all means, do it after everything else and after everyone has been able to train. At least you'll have a lot more space in the gym, right? But anyway, I hope that somehow these few examples from my own experiences can help you out to decide essentially what type of day you can go about your training. All right, guys. So that is it for today's episode, for today's show. I hope that you were able to get a few tips to consider as well for your own journey. All right, Coach Harvey here, guys, reminding you always to never give up on your movement journey because it's never too late to move. Bye. See you again next week.